In my last video, I took a look at the SNES Classic Mini, and some of the games it had to offer. We had some really great games, but we also had some games which were, well, not so good. So let's wrap this up and play the remaining games. First up we have Street Fighter 2 Turbo, widely considered one of the greatest fighting games ever made. I will agree that while this game is fun, particularly in multiplayer mode, it is pretty confusing at first, and takes some time to get used to. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, take into account the controls. It may look like I'm doing a really crap job here, but I'm actually trying my best, and that's because the controls are quite awkward. For example, to jump, by instinct I press the B button, or the A button, but in this game, to jump you press up. Yeah, up. And given that a lot of these jumps have to be performed with a lot of accuracy, it wears on your thumb really quick. But even once you got that figured out, the moves in this game are still difficult. On your first try, you're just sitting there mashing buttons frantically in the hope your character will actually do something. Look at this! Look at this! What did I do there? You sit there frantically trying out every possible combination of buttons until you find out that it's down, forward, and Y. And even then, it only seems to work around half the time. But most important of all, how on earth are you supposed to know all that? You might as well buy a subscription to Nintendo Power or something. Overall, Street Fighter 2 Turbo isn't bad, but as you can see, I need a bit more practice at it. Overall, I'd give the game a 7 out of 10. It is a pretty good game when you really get down to it, but the controls kind of hinder it from getting the top mark. Next up is Secret of Mana, another great game in the SNES library. You play as what appears to be a young boy who goes around fighting enemies with a sword and slashing through grass, collecting money. Anyone else getting Zelda flashbacks? Yeah, the game is essentially a hybrid between Zelda and Final Fantasy, and that isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, I would say that only strengthens this game further. Other than that, not a huge amount to say, but I haven't progressed very far. Overall, I'd give this game an 8 out of 10. It does seem like a game worth checking out, even if it is overshadowed by its elder brothers, Final Fantasy and Legend of Zelda. Next up, we have the one and the only Mega Man X. Yeah, this game is badass. Similar to Contra 3, it's a side-scroller, and you go around shooting up enemies with your arm cannon. How many of these types of games were there at the time exactly? I mean, think about it. You had Contra 3, you have Mega Man, Life Force, Rambo, Metal Slug, Ikari Warrior, Gunstar, Captain Star Wars, Rebel Assault. Yeah, you get the idea. The shoot-'em-up genre was very popular at the time. Like Contra 3, this game is pretty difficult as well. If you're one of those people who thinks that games like Dark Souls are difficult, well, try playing Mega Man X. Overall, I'd give Mega Man X an 8 out of 10. The difficulty gets a bit frustrating, but it's a Mega Man game, so it's to be expected. Up next is Super Metroid, which is perhaps my favourite game for the system. This game is renowned for its dark tone, and this game does a fantastic job at conveying it. This game is just oozing with atmosphere, and is just deliciously creepy at sections. The game immediately starts you off going to retrieve the Metroid, but unfortunately, things have got a bit out of hand at the space station where they were experimenting on it. Absolutely everything is trying to kill you, including this weird space dragon. And if that wasn't enough, after you've defeated the dragon, the space station immediately decides it's gonna self-destruct. Even worse is the fact that there's a time limit to get out of the space station. I tell you, nothing gets your heart pounding like having to escape an exploding space station on the first level of the game. That's one way to get you on your feet. Give them a heart attack before the main game even starts. Once you've landed on the main planet, this is where the game really starts. I have to say that it is pretty confusing though. The whole planet is a labyrinth of tunnels, and you have to navigate each one of them to progress through the game. And just listen to the music. If the main goal of the developers was to make you feel so anxious to the point where you'd shut the game off, I think they succeeded. Other than that, the gameplay is like your typical Metroid game. You go around as Samus completing various tasks in order to stop the evil Metroid. Overall, I'd give this game 10 out of 10. I may seem biased in my choice, but this game really does have that much of an effect upon me. It's deliciously creepy and has fantastic gameplay. Next up is Super Punch-Out!, the sequel to the original Punch-Out! For the NES, which was in itself a sequel to the original arcade game. Like the original, you play as Little Mac, competing to win the title of World Champion. Along the way, you have some pretty challenging opponents to face off against, each of which has their own special way of defeating them. However, once you get it down packed, you can take them down pretty easily. One thing I would like to point out is that this game is more similar to the arcade version of Punch-Out!, just the fact that the camera is positioned behind you, and that you have multiple different ways of taking down an opponent, unlike in the NES version, where you really only had one way of winning. As you progress further through the game, your opponents become more and more challenging, and will require different tactics to knock them down. For example here, with Narcissus Prince, you have to punch him in the face, which catches him off guard. Then, you can go in for the kill. Personally, this game holds a special place for me, as it was the first SNES game I ever played. Overall, I'd give Super Punch-Out! A 10 out of 10. A lot of people criticize it because it is so different to the NES version. However, to me, that only makes it all the better. Next up is Final Fantasy III, the third game in the series. Sorry, did I say the third game in the series? Oh, I meant the sixth game. Yeah, I really wish developers would stop doing that. Similarly to Zelda, this game is played in a top-down perspective. When you run into an enemy, you enter battle mode, where you're able to use certain magic items and special moves in order to take down your opponent. It's kind of like the grandfather of games like Pokemon, in that sense. I haven't played very much of this game so far, but from what I've seen, it looks pretty good. It's been hailed by many gamers as the greatest Final Fantasy game ever made, so I probably will be playing more of this game. For now, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. You may think that I haven't played enough of this game to give a proper judgment yet, but given that this game was the predecessor to some of my favourite games like Pokemon and Earthbound, in that respect it deserves credit where credit is due. Oh yeah, now we're talking. Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo. Widely regarded as the best game on the system. And no wonder. It has some of the best level design, the best music, and the best gameplay on the entire system. It is just a fun game. You play as Donkey Kong, going around collecting bananas and saving the world from King Cruel. In fact, I'm only going to show you a little bit of the gameplay, because that would be doing a disservice to you. If you haven't already, play this game now. From me personally, it easily gets a 10 out of 10. It's just that fun to play. The characters are likeable, and the gameplay is just memorable, especially the minecart scenes. Next up we have Kirby's Dream Course. Yeah, might as well have a Kirby game on the system while you're at it. This particular game in the Kirby franchise is played from an isometric angle, similar to games like Marble Madness or Sonic 3D Blast. The simple aim of this game is to roll Kirby into the hole. And that's all you've got to do. Sounds easy, right? Well, I'll tell you what, it bloody well isn't. Here we go. Got the aim, got it all done. There. How did I miss that? That's ridiculous. Right, got everything down packed, got the aim, got it good. There we... Bloody hell! That's ridiculous, I got it perfect. Who would have thought a Kirby game would be so difficult? Overall, Kirby's Dream Course isn't bad, but it gets repetitive, which earns it a 7 out of 10 on my list. Not a bad game, but not a great game either. Next up is Earthbound, another really good game for the system. Play as a young kid called Ness, haha, very clever Nintendo, who's going around trying to save the world from the evil Gygus. On his journey, he must go around fighting creatures, gaining experience, yada yada yada, you get the point. It's another RPG game. However, out of all the RPGs I've reviewed so far, it's probably my favourite of the bunch. I don't know what's so good about it. Probably because it's similar to Pokemon in that respect. If I were to have any critique of this game, it would probably be the fact that many of the enemies are just crows, cats, rats, and dogs and things like that. Everyday household pests. Our hero is apparently so weak that he can even be killed by these creatures, but it's all worth it for the battle with Gygus at the end. Overall, Earthbound from me gets a 9 out of 10. While I wouldn't call it the best RPG out there, it still is a heck of a good one, and you ought to try it out if you have the chance. Up next, we have Yoshi's Island, also known as Super Mario World 2, although it really has nothing to do with the previous game. In fact, it isn't even a sequel at all, it's a prequel. A sequel prequel, if you would call it. In this game, you go around as Yoshi, whose aim is to carry baby Mario to safety. Why would they put that in the game? Was the programmer's aim to create the most annoying sound in human existence? Man, that should be the sound from Dumb and Dumber.
Hey, wanna hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Other than that, the gameplay is amazing. The graphics are neat and stylized, and still hold up even to this day. Overall, I give Yoshi's Island an 8 out of 10. It's a pretty fun game, and there's a lot of stuff to do in it. What holds it back from being perfect though? Next is Super Mario RPG. Yeah, it seems a little cheap to do an RPG based on Mario, but it's pretty fun actually. Instead of a top-down perspective like your typical RPG, it's actually played from an isometric angle, which makes it pretty unique to the RPG genre. Right off the bat, the game starts you off on a battle against Bowser. Man, that's one way to get you on your toes really fast. Go straight to the final boss. Imagine if that was just the game. Mario ends up losing the battle and getting kicked out of the castle. His aim now is to, you guessed it, save the princess.
Of course!
Other than that, I don't have that much to say at the moment. I haven't played very much of this game, and look forward to playing some more, but for now, it gets an 8 out of 10. It looks pretty cool, and the graphics are nice and stylized. The second to last game is Kirby Superstar. Yeah, another Kirby game. My favourite. Now this particular Kirby game is special because it contains not 1, but 8 games in one. Yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'll go over some of the highlights. The first one is called Spring Breeze, with one simple goal, reach the end of the stage. Yeah, I can't say much other than that. It's a bit tedious, but it's good fun. The next one I played was Gourmet Race, which is a lot more fun. This time, you're racing against King DDD in an effort to eat as much food as possible before reaching the end goal. It's not bad, and the expressions are fun, particularly when DDD beats you. But for the most part, I find this game to be rather forgettable. But it isn't bad at all. So overall, I would give it a 7 out of 10. It is kind of fun sometimes. Last but not least, we have Star Fox 2. Yes, it's hideous. Which is why I've put Zelda from CDI up here. Even that looks prettier than this garbage. While I'll give it credit, it doesn't look as bad as the previous Star Fox. It still doesn't look that great. It looked outdated even at the time, which was probably why it was never even released. Oh yeah, did I mention that? This game never saw its way to shelves, probably due to the fact that the Nintendo 64 was about to be launched. Once again, you play as Star Fox in his transforming spaceship thing, going around fighting strange space butterflies and a weird space dragon that looks like a crossbreed between Super Shenron and Rayquaza. My main gripe with this game is one thing. It just feels unfinished. You could probably finish the entire game in less than an hour. Overall, Star Fox 2 gets a 5 out of 10 from me. It isn't a really good game. In fact, it's the worst on the console. But it's not terrible, per se. You can find some enjoyment in this game. So there you have it. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System Classic Mini. It's a pretty fun console, and has an excellent library of games, even though there are a few dubbed ones. But the main question, is it worth it? This console is going to set you back £80. Now that's a lot of money, but there are some great games included with the system, so yeah, I think it is worth it. People often say things like, why don't you just emulate the games? Well, emulation does take quite a lot of work, and it's also a grey area in terms of legality, so unless you're a tech guru, you're probably going to end up buying one of these. I wonder what's next for Nintendo. I've already seen people anticipating the N64 Mini, but what about after that? The GameCube Mini? It's already pretty small as it is. The Wii Mini, which we've technically already had. The Wii U Mini? I think they'll gloss over that one. And hell, maybe in a few decades we'll get the Switch Mini. I wait in anticipation for that one.